Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode here on English Champion. This week, I want to share with you an article I read recently in the Chronicle of Higher Education that is about something that is going on university campuses that if you are not part of the world of academia, you may not know about. If you're not part of the world of sports at the college level, you may not know about. But if you are a parent or anyone who invests in higher education, you definitely need to be aware of this. And so I have a particular background in this that many people don't. Um, I was a student athlete at the college level. I was a coach at the college level, and I've been a professor at the college level. So I understand these issues from every single facet: the student point of view, the coach point of view, and the teacher point of view. Very few other people have that kind of background. And so my knowledge is particularly pertinent for an article about what is going on regarding how colleges are drawing students to their school. This has been going on a while, but with many of the school closures in the last couple of years, we're starting to see why some of that might be happening. And the reason that this caught my eye this week was that the title of the article says, "We have more athletes than we have fans." And the subtitle says, "Many small colleges have invested in sports to boost enrollment. What happens when it doesn't work?" So this is about small colleges. Big universities, this stuff, it doesn't affect them in the way it does small colleges. The way money comes into the school is different, and just the population size is different. So small colleges are very much affected by the role that sports play on those particular campuses. And yet again, I have a specific knowledge of this because I went to a small college and I coached at a small college and I've been a professor at a small college. So I know what small colleges are like and how they operate. And I've worked in institutions where the people running things were not from a small college environment. They never had an athletic environment background. They never had a teaching background. They didn't know any of this, and yet they're the ones putting these rules or not rules, but these ideas, these proposals in place. And again, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but it's a perspective thing. And many of the people doing this don't understand a campus climate in the way that someone with my background does. Again, as an athlete, as a coach, and as a professor, as well as going to a small college, coaching at a small college, and teaching at a small college. I've done all of this, and so I want to give a little more insight into this article because it's going to highlight one individual school and some key ideas and key problems going on at that school. But I'm going to zoom out a little bit and give you some greater context that this is what goes on at all different types of schools that are roughly this size. And there's more to this story than even what is in this article. So this is about the story of Lourdes University, which is an institution in Ohio, small private college. And they have recently been adding, in the last 10 years or so, a lot of sports to try to boost enrollment. Being small, they struggle with finances, and so they needed more students and more tuition dollars coming in, so they added many sports. So I'll just pick up with some of the article here. Athletics is the main attraction at Lourdes, which offers 11 sports for men, 10 for women, and 3 that are co-ed. Over the past dozen years, Lourdes has built a robust athletics program to boost its enrollment. In one sense, the strategy has worked. In the fall of 2012, Lourdes had just 139 students who played in a varsity sport. In the fall of 2022, that number had grown to 448. So quite an increase. The president of Lourdes said the commitment was made to develop our athletic facilities so we could attract a certain kind of student athlete. I think we can I think we can check off that box right now. The problem for Lourdes and many other small private colleges is that athletics has done little or nothing to attract students who don't play sports. Despite more than tripling the number of students who participate in athletics, Lourdes saw its full-time undergraduate enrollment tumble from 1,285 in the fall of 2012 to just 691 in the fall of 2022. In 2012, athletes made up 11% of Lourdes' undergraduate student body. Now that share is nearly two-thirds. So again, this is fairly common. This is a school, again, that is declining pretty rapidly. This isn't the case for every school. Some schools have either been able to stay level or they've actually increased enrollment. But the share here is interesting. They went from 11% to nearly two-thirds. So they almost tripled in the percentage of students who are athletes at their school. That two-thirds number is actually, compared to schools I've been around, quite low. I'll talk about that here shortly. Other schools have way more athletes as part of their percentage of their student body than that. More than 80% of private colleges enrolling between 500 and 3,000 students increased the number of athletes on their campuses between 2012 and 2022. But like Lourdes, 56% of those colleges lost undergraduate enrollment overall. So it got kind of half and half. Some are successful, some actually lose enrollment. The athletics bet has seemed like a reasonable one, especially as youth sports has flourished and young athletes and their parents have clamored for opportunities to keep playing. So this is where this article is going to go, is that, well, there's athletes that want to play, and so we're going to provide them an opportunity to keep playing. That's fine. We want students to pursue things that they love, and it's enjoyable to have college athletics and competition and all that stuff. But again, why exactly are students doing this? And what's the cost involved in just allowing students to keep playing, especially at small college, like a low level? Like you're not going pro at these schools. I've never even heard of this school, so it's not like you're one of the best teams in the country or something like that. So why exactly do you feel the need to keep playing? Again, not that we want to diminish what they love or something like that, but at a certain point, again, you're at college trying to prepare for your career. At least that's what students say they want. Like, do you need to keep playing? I don't know. I played in college because I got a chance to play on the best team in the country. And so, like, if I would have gone to some other school that was a low-level school that wasn't competitive in any way at a national level, I don't know if I would have kept playing. In fact, when I was in high school, I didn't really plan on playing in college. The only reason I did is because I played at the best college in the country. And so I was part of a national championship team. And then my sophomore year, we were in the national championship game. So, like, I wanted to be a part of a winning, successful program, and I was. But if I hadn't been part of that, I don't know if I see the appeal of continuing to play when you're kind of supposed to be preparing for your future life and stuff. So I don't know. That's just me. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But we get all these athletes who think, oh, I want to keep playing at the college level. But it's like, but why? So you can tell your friends back home I play at the college level, but you play on a team no one's ever heard of and you're not any good. And why? What are you spending all these hours doing when you could be studying and doing your work to prepare for your career? I don't know. That's just me, I guess. As an enrollment strategy, however, college athletics programs have a mixed record. In some cases, they've been little more than a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. Adding sports might slow a decline, the data suggest, but at a cost because athletic teams are expensive to stand up and support. Yes, I've mentioned at places I've worked that this is a Band-Aid mentality. This is you have underlying problems here, and you're just looking for a quick fix. And the question is, how is that sustainable? And for many schools, it's just not. A heavy focus on athletics may even deter students who have little or no interest in sports from attending, said this guy who's a higher ed consultant who has been both a college president and an athletic director at private colleges. If the most prominent activities and facilities on campus are those dedicated to athletics, he said, students who don't play sports may not be able to see themselves in that culture. That's definitely true. Again, I'll give a little more of my specific experience here shortly, but when you have that many athletes as an overall percentage of your school, the other students feel left out. They can tell what the school cares about, and it's not them. They're just good kids who want to get an education and prepare for their adult life and their careers and all that stuff. And they see all the opportunities on campus go to these other kids. And we'll see what some of those are here shortly. And it really disenchants a lot of those students who are just there to be students, and they feel left out. It was relatively easy to build an athletics program at Lourdes, said one of the vice presidents. Now we're realizing that we have more athletes than we have fans. For all the growth in athletics, its 90-acre campus still reflects its roots as a junior college in the Catholic order. So it gives a little background of the school, how it was a small campus and it wasn't a university with all these big facilities and sports teams. And so they've had a difficult transition going from a tiny closed-in campus to trying to offer all of this extra stuff. As an undergraduate enrollment boomed nationally during the Great Recession, the university's board saw an opportunity to shift its mission and become a residential liberal arts university. They had been mostly a commuter school. Key to that change was adding athletics, the board decided, as a way to attract students to live and study at the campus. Starting in 2010, the university created 8 teams: baseball for men, softball for women, men's and women's teams for basketball, golf, and volleyball. The path to athletics was unconventional, but its strategy mirrored what was happening across small colleges. Administrators added a dizzying number of teams. So in addition to those first 8, they saw, oh, we can keep adding more. And so they added men's and women's bowling, lacrosse, soccer, track and cross country, tennis, and wrestling, along with co-ed teams for cheer, dance, and esports. Among the colleges in the Chronicle's data, athletes increased from a median of 21% of undergraduates in 2012 to nearly a third in 2022. So that's across all schools. Adding athletics at Lourdes has been something of a success, at least in the kinds of students that Lourdes attracts. We have students from all over the nation, all over the world that most schools our size would not have without athletics, says the chair of the Division of Education and a professor. Students come to us from other countries solely because of our experiences in athletics, and that has changed the face of who we serve. Let's pay close attention to the word he just used there. Students come to us from other countries solely because of our athletics. Solely. Not because we're a great school, not because we have great professors, not because we're going to help prepare kids for their future careers, not because we're going to nurture their soul in some way, not because we're going to develop them into truly educated and wise adults. No. Solely because of athletics. So this is what's happening. And I'm not just picking on, international kids. This is just any athlete who goes to these types of schools. These schools need to understand you're getting kids who are only coming to your school because you happen to have a bowling team or a football team or whatever. They don't care about any of it except, I just want to join that team. I'll put up with all your classes and I might do some homework sometimes, and I don't even know if I'll graduate. I just want to bowl. I just want to keep playing baseball at this low level that no one cares about. That's what you're building your school around students who do this solely because of athletics. So when you're trying to be a university and you think you stand for something more, transcendental, but then you do this, you're not acknowledging, this is what your student body, this is what your campus ethos is going to become. A bunch of kids who don't care about anything else except their little sport. And I've seen it happen, and it's not good. I'll explain why here in a minute. This other guy, who is the faculty athletics representative and helps navigate any academic disputes between the faculty and the athletics department, said that along with diversifying the student body, athletics has had an academic benefit. Athletes tend to be highly engaged students and also have higher grades on average than students who don't play intercollegiate sports at Lourdes, he said, because they're connected to teammates. They also feel at home on campus as soon as they arrive, and that's good for retention. Sometimes. That's not always the case. Maybe on average that tends to be how it is, but trust me, that is not true everywhere, okay? On the flip side of that, you have students who are less engaged than ever because, as we just said, they're only there solely for sports. They're not there to get an education. They're not there to be part of the campus environment. They're not there because of the belief system of the university. Okay, these people are, again, they're trying to have it both ways. They want the students and they're there because of sports, but then they also try to pretend that they're having all these extra successes. And it's like, some might, but you're also going to have thousands of students across the country, athletes across the country, who don't care about any of that stuff. So you have to take the bad with the good. You can't just assume it's all positive. The investments in Lourdes athletics have quickly paid off on the field, too. 9 of the university's teams have made a total of 31 appearances in national championships since 2010. So they're having a little bit of success, but again, there are certainly better schools with their sports teams. Winning teams may have piqued athletes' interest in Lourdes. What probably secured their enrollment, though, here's the key, was a scholarship that the university couldn't actually afford. So how's that possible? You have all these kids, aren't they excited about sports? But then the university can't afford it. How does that happen? Well, unlike the NCAA, where most colleges participate under Division III without the ability to offer athletic scholarships, the NAI, which is what Lourdes is part of, permits all of its members to offer such aid. NCAA programs can usually cover it because they have other revenues coming in from media and elsewhere. But at places like Lourdes, scholarships are paid for by tuition discounting that on average shaves about 50% off the price at most private colleges. All right, so here's a key thing that if you're not part of the world of academia, you may not know. Notice the words scholarships and tuition discounting are right next to each other, all right? Because if you're a regular person and you've heard your whole life the word scholarship, you've thought, oh, scholarships go to the top students, the smartest. Like they have all the best SAT scores, they had the highest GPAs in high school, whatever that was. The best applications, something like that. Or they're the best at some other extracurricular, maybe sports, maybe music, maybe drama, maybe whatever. but the school really wants them because they're special in some way, because they've proven that they're excellent at some thing in their previous education. That's what traditionally scholarship meant. But we have this other phrase, tuition discounting. And what that is when schools, again, cut the tuition cost and give it to kids and then call it a scholarship. All right. So let's say you go to you're looking at a school, you're a parent, and the school costs, $20,000 a year or whatever. Your kid, who was never even a good athlete, might get a call from this school and go, "Hey, we want to offer you a scholarship." And you might think, "Well, that's weird. My kid was, the third string running back on the team and hardly ever got to play. And how did he earn a scholarship?" Well, we really want him, and we think he's going to be great, and so we're going to give you a $10,000 scholarship. And so parents and players go, "Oh my gosh, I could get a chance to get a college scholarship worth $10,000." And they immediately forget that, well, wait a second, you're still on the hook for the other $10,000. And so you look like you've gotten a scholarship, but really you've just gotten a tuition discount. Now you might think, "Oh, well, that's nice. The schools are reducing their fees. After all, schools are very expensive, so maybe this is a school that's trying to do better and reduce their tuition, and that's how they can get these kids in." No, 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 no. That's only for certain kids, because the rest of the student body doesn't get those discounts. And so when you hear scholarship and you're a student or you're a parent of a student who might not normally have been thought of as being a scholarship type of person, according to the traditional definition of that word, be very aware that you are getting some sort of discount that your student didn't actually earn. The school is just absolutely desperate for the rest of your money. That's why they're bringing you on campus. They don't actually care whether or not you're going to be a good football player. After all, we know you weren't a good high school football player. So we're just letting you say you could be on the team, and we'll give you a discount so that that extra $10,000 that you are on the hook for, that's what you pay us. Because after all, if you didn't come to our school, we'd get zero out of you. We'd rather get 10,000 out of you than nothing. And so even though we can't get the full 20 out of you because you wouldn't have come here otherwise, we'll get the 10, and you'll just have to deal with the fact that you're not actually a good athlete or even a good student if we're dealing with academics here. So these words, scholarships and tuition discounting, parents and everyone else affiliated with schools, you need to be very aware of what those words mean, because this is a sneaky thing that universities do to make it sound like, "Oh, well, we give a lot of scholarship money." It's like, no, you don't. You give discounts to kids because you're desperate to have them at your school. That's what you're doing. At Lourdes, this person said, coaches had been adding the discount of the athletic scholarship on top of the university's normal merit aid to attract the highest performing athletes. As a result, he said the tuition discount for athletes averaged 74% compared to about 34% for the students not playing sports. In other words, the university was spending far too much on financial aid for a large majority of its students. Okay? So see, the school isn't just being really generous and trying to cut tuition for people. No, no, no. If they did that, they'd do it for all the other good students. They're just doing it for your athlete. Because the other 34% who get discounts, yeah, that leaves out the other, 66% who didn't get discounts, who came to the school to just want to be a regular student, to study under good professors, to learn interesting things, to get prepared for their career, to study, some field that they might not be able to do later on, whatever they want to do. They're there to be a student. They didn't get the discount. So what happens is these schools use the athletes and their scholarships to then bring them in and then force all the other kids to pay full price, or at least 66% of them. Okay? So that their university is staying afloat by using the students who are just wanting to be good students to fund all these athletes who, as we said, are only there solely for their sport. This is the kind of university environment we're creating, where it's all riding on the backs of those kids who are actually there and want to be a decent student. That seems really fair, doesn't it? So this is the reality of sports at these small colleges. And again, I have nothing against small college sports. I was a small college athlete. I believe in small college sports. I just believe in being honest with people and not using kids to just try to boost your enrollment numbers, which is exactly what these schools do. On one team, the tuition discount rate was a whopping 89%, said this person, who explained that he's working with the team's coach to set different expectations. It's been difficult for that coach to understand the way that we may need to change things here, and he may not be able to get the same level from a talent perspective of student athlete that he's been able to get in the past. Yeah, so these coaches are just going out and they're just grabbing everybody. They're just like, well, my vice president of enrollment told me that I have to recruit as many kids as possible, even though they're not good enough to actually be on my team. I have to recruit them because we need enrollment numbers to go up. And so the only way to get those kids here is to give them all scholarships and get them in the door. And so what they're finding is, yeah, but now we're letting in so many kids on those discounts that actually our school isn't bringing in enough revenue. Irony of all ironies. Like the thing you thought you were going to do, which is bring in revenue, is actually forcing you to lose revenue. Yeah, it's because you didn't listen to those of us who could have seen this coming. Lourdes is now setting net tuition goals for coaches. The head wrestling coach said the limits on athletic scholarships have forced coaches to make hard choices. We want to be competitive, but we also know we have to keep the doors open as well. Oh, see the loop that's been created, okay? So the administration said, we need to keep the doors open. We're running out of money. So go get as many kids as you can. One way we'll do that is sports. So you coaches, go get as many athletes as you possibly can because we need those tuition dollars. And so the way to entice those athletes was to give them discounts on tuition. And so now they're at the school, but now the school goes, well, wait a second, allowing in all those kids who aren't paying full price has actually lost revenue because we still have to pay the expenses for all these kids on campus. So go get more kids. And so the coaches go recruit more. And then they bring them on. And again, the only way they got them there was to discount it. And so we got this doom loop of using kids for money. And then that actually causes everything to get more expensive because, again, you still have to pay the expenses on all those kids that you're housing and feeding and taking on sports travel trips and all that stuff. And now you're just doubling down and doing the same thing over and over. Oh, we need more now. Do more, do more. And so now we're back to, well, we gotta trim this back because we have to keep the doors open. Yeah, you were trying to keep the doors open before. That's why you got into this mess. It's like you're just going in circles. Ridiculous. What's more, the university isn't really built for big-time athletics. Lourdes shares fields for baseball, softball, and soccer with the local high school and has just one indoor court shared by the men's and women's basketball and volleyball team. Yeah, I've been on campuses like this where you don't even have the facilities to run the things you're running. And what ends up happening, I saw this happen, where the coaches and administration would just lie to students. Like, oh yeah, that field will be done by next year. Yeah, it's not built yet, but we got it under construction. It'll be ready by next year. 4 years go by, the kid graduates, and they're like, yeah, that field never happened. They told me it was when I was a freshman. I just graduated, and that field never existed. So that's what happens at these places where, it's a small campus. Space is limited. You got to figure stuff out, and they just don't have room or money because they've wasted all of it on discounted tuition. And so they just lie to students. That's what happens. Because of that, the universities had to increase the hours of the dining hall to accommodate team practices that may happen during the times other students are at breakfast or dinner. A large share of Lourdes students are studying nursing. The clinical rotations that nursing students must complete for their degree are set by the hospitals, said this one person, the faculty athletics representative, and often can't be changed to accommodate a practice or a competition. The university's provost said the size of the university means the institution must always be nimble to allow athletes to meet course requirements. Okay, so here's what happens. Whether it's dining or any other campus services or courses where things are on like a normal schedule, daily schedule. Well, because there's not enough facilities, then these teams are practicing at 7:00 at night, let's say, instead of in the afternoon like most schools do. Well, maybe at 7:00 at night, there's an evening class that student needs to take, like in nursing or like in education or business often, where, someone who's an adjunct business professor runs their business till 5:00, and then they come over and teach an evening class. Or same thing in education, where teachers teach till 3, and then they come over to the university in the evening and teach an adjunct class. That's the only time the classes are offered. And so what would happen is I'd have students who are like, yeah, you need to take that class. And they're like, oh, I can't. I got practice that night. It's like, so skip practice. You need this class to graduate. Like, oh, I'll do it later. And then 4 years would go by, and they still hadn't taken those classes that they needed because of their athletic schedule. And now they haven't graduated. And we had students leave without finishing their degree because they were more beholden to a silly practice schedule than actually getting their degree work done. So again, whether it's ability to eat meals or take classes or whatever, again, those services on campus, the athletes aren't adapting to the school. And instead, this lady goes, well, the institution must be nimble. Like, how about the students be nimble to the institution? How about that? Because after all, the institution is what matters more. The school, the university, is the most important thing, not that individual kid. If that kid wants to major in that field, then he needs to adapt to the courses in that major. not the major to him. Why? Because it's not fair to all the other kids who aren't athletes. You're reducing just the professionalism, frankly, but also the reputation of your programs when everyone who's not in these athletic teams goes, how come they get all the accommodations? Like, I bust my butt to make sure I'm at class on time. That guy doesn't have to come to class. And yet the school gave him an alternative time, or they're setting up some like private tutorial, or how come the athletes get all the accommodations on this campus and I didn't get any of that? How come all the athletes get these discounts and yet I'm paying full tuition? What's this all about? And then those students, if they manage to survive at all, they graduate a bit disgruntled with their university and then go tell everyone in the community, yeah, that school, like, they don't care about you if you're not an athlete. And or they left they lasted 2 years. They watched this and are like, forget this, I'm out of here. I'll go to another school that actually cares about, like the structure of my academic program. Yeah, that's how you build a bad reputation, is your institution is nimble with all these athletes who don't even care about education. The challenges facing colleges like Lourdes are widespread. About 2/3 of all public and private degree-granting colleges show at least one sign of financial distress, including declining enrollment, expenses outpacing revenues, and losses in endowment value. Yet, those colleges will continue to double down on athletics because it guarantees that some students will be enticed to enroll. So the doubling down is exactly what I talked about in one of my previous videos about left brain thinking versus right brain thinking, where you have to have a different perspective on this problem. What these administrators or people who advise them on this stuff is, well, you need more money, you need more revenue. So here's a system, start a sport and recruit for that sport and repeat that 10 other times. And now you have more students, which means now you have more revenue. You're just putting in a system without thinking from the right brain perspective of, well, what will the effect be if we have a bunch of students on our campus who are not interested in academics? What will be the effect if we give a bunch of students these tuition discounts that don't even cover the cost of educating them? What will be the effect on our campus in the long run when we get a reputation that the community knows we don't really care about academics here? We're just here to provide a place for kids to play sports at a low level. Like, what's the long-term thinking here? How's this going to affect the classes and the professors, where classes are now filled with students who are just athletes and who don't care about studying? Like, how does that affect the professors and their daily mindset for them to do their job? How does it affect our social life on campus when, a giant percentage of our students are athletes and we have a small percentage who aren't, and those kids feel left out and they're like, yeah, I don't think I want to be here. And then they leave. You don't think about all those things because all you think is, we need more revenue, so let's just start sports. That's the easiest way to get kids here so we can make money off them. Yeah, that's total left brain doubling down, because then when it's not working, you go, well, let's just add more sports. Let's bring more on. Let's not only add more sports, let's bring on even more onto each team. And how do we know that students are doing this? We did a survey of our student athletes, said this one guy, and 73% of them said they wouldn't have attended their institution if it wasn't for the sport. Yeah, so is that what you want? 73% of your entire student body going, yeah, I don't really care about anything here. I'm only here because of the sport. Like, what kind of environment does that create when 27% of your kids are going, yeah, there's just a fraction of us who actually care about being here, who actually care what the school stands for, who care about our academic programs. That's a pretty small number. We feel quite outnumbered here, that we're the only ones who care about this place. Yeah, that's not good for the morale of the school. Not only the students, but again, the professors who have to deal with these kids every day. But again, administrators don't think of it that way. Colleges have to be aware that there are still additional costs for those athletic teams. Those extra expenses include transportation to competitions and uniforms. Instead of extending dining hours, some colleges pile on costs by catering meals for athletes or deciding they want to broaden their competition to a larger region. So yeah, this is all true. This is called embedded growth obligations. For anyone who understands anything about economics, you go, when you grow, growth isn't just automatic profit. When you grow, you also have extra expenses, because for every 100 kids you bring on to play a sport, well, that's another 100 dorm rooms that you might need to build. That's another 100 meals 3 times a day that you need to provide. You got to pay for people to cook those meals and serve those meals and clean up after those meals. You got to pay for the construction on those dorms and the maintenance on those dorms for decades going forward. You got to pay for all that. So you don't just get to go, we're going to start a sport that brings in 100 new athletes and new students, and we're going to keep all that profit. All of a sudden we have all that money in our pocket. Like, No, there's a growth obligation. When you grow, you have more to pay for. So what you got to do is instead is find the sweet spot, of course, where yeah, you're still gaining more students, but it's not costing you the same as, what sports often does. And slow growth through really good academics is what does that, because then you bring in the kids who actually want to be there. They're happy to pay full or close to full tuition, so your revenue stays up. They stay for graduation, and you're respected in the community because you're doing exactly what you said you're doing, which is being a university. So, embedded growth obligations, key word that schools need to understand. Here's something I saw firsthand. Another trend has been to add athletes by simply increasing rosters on athletic teams or adding several junior varsity squads. But it's hard to see how this will appeal to athletes in the long run because it creates enormous rosters with little opportunity for playing time. Lourdes tried this in the past, growing the baseball team from 35 players in 2012 to more than 50 in 2022, but the effort has not been successful, said the university's athletic director. We've tried expansion with JV programs, and we just haven't been able to retain the students because we're not able to give them the best experience. Okay, so this is what schools do. And I was at a school that went nuts with this. A college football team should have around 100 students, 100 athletes, okay? Because, you need a certain amount to be your starters and second string, all that stuff. But then kids get hurt, kids become ineligible. You need some kids on practice squad, like scout team and all that stuff. About 100 is a normal number for most universities, especially big universities. If you're smaller, you can probably get away with less than that. I was at a school that went up towards 200 students, 200 football players. Okay, I was at a school where the baseball team was at 100 players. It's funny that she's like, "Oh, we went up to 50." Yeah, I've been at a school they went up to 100. Okay, a pro baseball team has 25 people on it. So let's say a college team, so you can get the freshmen some experience, and again you have backups in case kids become ineligible. Let's say you have 40. Maybe 40 is a good number. Okay, 100. That's insane. A basketball program, any normal school basketball program, especially at a small school like this, somewhere between 20 and 25. You're going to have 12 to 15 varsity players, and then maybe another 8 to 10 who you can have on a JV program who are, again, like scout team. You're building up some freshmen if they're going to end up being good enough. That's about all you need. I was at a school that had 75 basketball players. Okay? I had a kid once who, not to stereotype, but didn't look like a basketball player. Okay, I was a basketball player. I coached college basketball players. I know what a college basketball player looks like. This kid was not an athlete. Okay, and not a college athlete anyway. And so he told me, he's like, "Oh, well, I'm a basketball player." I was like, "Oh, really? Okay." And so I was chatting with him, getting to know him, and I was like, "Well, I've been to the games. I've looked at the roster. I know some of the other players. I've never seen your name on any roster. So I thought, what do you mean you're a basketball player?" And he goes, "Oh, well, I'm on one of the JV teams." It's like, "Well, one of the JV teams? How many JV teams are there?" He goes, "I think there's 6." I go, "What?" He goes, "Well, yeah, there's the varsity team, and then there I think 5 or 6 JV teams, and each of those teams had 10 kids on it." So that, he goes, "Yeah." I go, "How do you even? We only have one gym at this school. Do you ever even play?" He's like, "Well, we practice once a week." So you're a college basketball player, and you only practice once a week. You never play any games because what other schools have 6 JV teams? I mean, so this kid isn't ever going to be at the varsity level. He's not a college basketball player, but he was enticed to come to school to play on the 6th JV team. And that kid left after one. I never saw that kid again. He disappeared. Why? Because of course he did. Why would he stay? As the article just said, we're not able to give them the best experience. Yeah, you know why? Because you lied to them from day one. You said, "Hey, come to our school. You'll be a basketball player." And meanwhile, yeah, they don't play. They barely practice. They're never going to suit up in a real game. So what are they doing here? They're spending tons of money at a private college for what? They're not getting an education. If they wanted their education, they can go somewhere cheaper because what you're offering doesn't matter to them. So this is real. I've seen it with my own 2 eyes. Trust me. It's crazy. Even if adding sports brings one group of students to the campus, studies suggest it may turn others away. These are D3 examples, so these aren't completely the same as the NAI level where Lourdes is talking about. But a December 2023 report concluded that among colleges at the D3 level, institutions did not increase their investment in athletics, we're more likely to see enrollment increases. Again, at D3, because they don't do scholarships, you're going to get students who are there for academics as well. So it's not quite the same. When you take the athletic scholarship away, that changes the entire environment, which I would love it if NAI went this route, because then you'd have students actually going to a school for the school and for the college experience, and playing your sport is just part of the overall experience rather than the only thing you care about, which is what happens when you just hand out athletic scholarships to everybody. A study published in the Economics of Education Review found that adding a football team at the D3 level of NCAA results in no statistically significant increase in enrollment and no positive impact on revenues or endowment. It also coincides with a decline in the share of women enrolling at the college. Key point here. The author of that study said he can't tell from the research why the gender balance changes at colleges, whether a shift in resources or recruiting strategy, or even that football is actually deterring women from enrolling, but some crowding out effect is going on. This is very real. I was at a school where 80% of the students were athletes. Okay? 80%. So imagine being in a class and you're one of the only kids in there who's not an athlete. You already feel left out. All right? And you're like, boy, this is weird because they're all talking about these things that aren't related to class, and I'm not a part of any of it. And so it's just strange. And I've had kids who were great students, again, non-athletes. And I'll tell this quick story. I had a student who was kind of struggling, again, didn't know where to fit in. I get an email from his mom several months into the year. And his mom's very appreciative of me because I kind of took the kid under my wing and was kind of guiding him through some stuff because he liked literature. And so from an English standpoint, I was kind of helping this kid along and kind of get used to college life. And we'd work on papers and talk about books together. And I was kind of trying to ease him into college life because he was very nervous about it. And so his mom emailed me, he's like, hey, I'm really appreciative. You've been such a blessing to help our son. When he arrived, he saw that everyone was athletes and he immediately felt he didn't fit in, but you've made such a good transition for him and he really loves your classes. And I was like, oh, great. That's nice. And didn't take long before that kid, even though he was doing very well at the end of the year, he's like, I'm sorry, Dr. Spivey, but I got to leave. It's just too expensive. And I'm just going to go to another school where I feel like I can fit in better. And so I lost that kid. Why? Because he was way outnumbered by all these athletes. And he felt like, no one here cares about what I care about because this isn't like a normal school. In normal schools, people would care about, reading and writing and talking about interesting things. No, everyone here just talks about their sport all day long. And so this isn't an academic place. So I was sad. He left. He was one of my majors. And so I lost him. But it's not just guys. This is females too, where this enrollment problem, this gender balance problem happens where, like I said, I was at school, 80% athletes, and we were at probably at least 60-40 male, maybe 65-35 male. And that's a real problem. I brought this up to people saying, listen, we can't have this many dudes on campus. Okay, I'm not saying discriminate against them and only recruit girls, but I'm saying we have to do something about this balance problem because when you have that many men, athlete men, we're talking about big, strong dudes who don't care about school for the most part. The females on this campus do not feel comfortable. And I'm not one to I don't like the whole toxic thing, but the girls, I'd be girls who are really good students who are my majors or I had have in class a number of times because they were good readers and writers. They would come to me like, Dr. Spivey, the guys on this campus are creeps because they're all these athletes and they just say whatever they want. They act however they want and no one does anything because athletes get all the advantages here. And so I was on one of these committees to, between athletics and academics because of my background, as I explained. I've done all this. I know this whole world. And I would take these concerns to the coaches or to the representatives at these meetings. And they'd be like, oh, okay, well, we'll look into it. Needless to say, within a short time, that committee was disbanded. and I was never asked for my input again. Why? Because I brought them the truth of what's going on. And we can't be recruiting this many athletes. It's throwing off the balance of our school academically, gender-wise. It's not good to have that many young men, testosterone-filled young men who don't care about anything except playing their sport, roaming a campus. It's not great. And so gender balance on a university campus is a real thing. And it's a delicate ecosystem. And athletics, because male sports tend to have just more participants. Again, there's no women's sport that has 200 players on it like a football team does. Women's sports, even if they're equal in number, like Title IX stuff, the size of the team is just smaller. So when you have a school that not only recruits tons of athletes and that are male athletes, and they are an overwhelming percentage of your entire student body, it is disastrous for the ethos and the like morale on campus. Everyone who actually cares about academics is like, everyone's annoyed or depressed or just frustrated all the time because our classes are filled with players who don't care. The girls are kind of scared to be around any of them because these dudes don't care. And you also have, from the guys' perspective, the vast majority of them are never actually going to play anyway. And so they're frustrated because they're like, hey, I thought I was going to come here and be an athlete, and yet I never practice. I never get in any games because I'm the ninth string, small forward on the basketball team, and like I'm never going to play. So why am I here? So you just have kids frustrated all the time. And then you're a teacher in these classrooms. You're trying to deal with trying to teach them how to write a coherent paragraph, and like it's just a terrible environment when athletics overrides the academic or other ethos that you might have on your campus. College presidents are keenly aware that they need to balance athletics with other activities on campus to remain relevant to a broad population of potential students. Yeah, no kidding. All of us right now are in a period of time where demographics are pushing us, says the president of this other college. I've never heard of them. Small college, I guess. We're looking for more opportunities to gain market share. You're going to get yourself in trouble if all you're looking for are demographics and market share. There's a whole bunch of ways to game that system. You need to have a bigger picture view than that. At the same time, this gentleman said, we don't want the school to be pigeonholed as a place where the emphasis is entirely on athletics. We want to be known for our academic heft, academic quality first and foremost. Yeah, every school says that, but are you going to actually do it? Because when it comes down to money, trust me, I've seen it live. They choose money. They don't choose academics. They choose money. And this is why we get the problems. One student said, when I was a first-year student, I kind of felt disconnected, but that's just what I've been told a lot of non-athlete commuter students felt like. So it's a common feeling. At Lourdes, what was once a potential solution to enrollment woes has become an albatross around the university's neck. Campus leaders cannot afford to cut most sports because it will automatically lose those athletes as students. The university is also not in a position to afford much else. So again, you've put yourself in this horrible cycle where you were desperate, so you got students. And now you're desperate again, but you can't afford to cut the very students that were the problems that you've now caused for yourself. And so we have to go get more students. And then that's going to cause more problems. And we need more students. When you double down and don't take a bigger picture of what the academic environment of a university should be, this is what you get. So they're adding some other programs to try to get other types of students in for studying certain majors. But at the same time, the university is cutting programs. Of course they are, because nothing is more valuable than athletics. So again, this happened at a university I was at where one of the programs that was our key, like one of our staples that our school said was part of our not core curriculum, but like this is one of our foundational majors that we need to have because it's part of our ethos, recently got cut. So it doesn't matter. When it comes down to money, athletics will win because we have these presidents or other administrators or other advisors to these people that are so short-sighted that they only view, like I said at the top, like Band-Aid solutions. Let's start another sport. Okay. Until that doesn't work, and then you have to start over. Even the athletics department has not been spared from the budget acts, not compared to academics. The university eliminated women's lacrosse in the fall of 2023, and both women's and men's tennis are under consideration because it's difficult to recruit enough players. Oh, so you decide to start a sport unaware that it's difficult to recruit those types of players. Maybe if you recruited players who cared about academics and who had something else going on in their life besides just caring only about sports, then you could get those kids to your school. So maybe you have a recruiting problem and an ethos problem. To attract more students who don't play sports, the university will have to find ways to help them feel connected outside the classroom. Unfortunately, declining revenue has also eliminated some of the activities that might appeal to those students. I was told there's supposed to be a pep band, said one student. But when I actually started out here, the pep band fell apart. Yeah, that'd be a cool thing. As the article concludes, it says, budget is mission, said a lady who's the president of the Association of American Colleges and Universities, which advocates for liberal arts education. College leaders say they're interested in supporting the liberal arts, but the cuts to academic programs and non-athletic extracurricular activities tell a different story. Quote, campus leaders are saying we need to attract more full-pay students, she said. One way to do that is through athletic programs, but at the same time, we are eviscerating the liberal arts and sciences. Yep. Gets back to the question of what we value and what our institutional missions are, which should always be driving our allocation of scarce resources. Yeah, it's about your mission. What do you believe in? Because you can say you believe in all sorts of things, but when those different things come into conflict, you're going to have to choose. I've said this before. You can only serve one God. So what do you believe in? And for most of these schools, it's we just want to make as much money as possible. And so the way to do that, even if it's for a good reason, like keeping your doors open, I understand the need to do that. It's, well, let's choose the easiest path possible, which is more sports, more athletes. And this is why these schools are in trouble, because it's unsustainable. So let me tell you a quick story to tie all this together of why this is so awful, okay? I had a student once who, again, I was at a small college, and this student was bombing my class, okay? So I call him into my office with about, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks left in the semester, and I sit him down. I go, hey, right now you're flunking my class. What's your plan over the final 3.5 weeks to get yourself up to a passing grade? Tell me your plan, which is what I always do. I never call kids in to berate them. I never call them in to offer my advice and to, let me help you get on track. Like, nope, what's your plan? I can help you with your plan, but you need to have a plan because it's your life. So you tell me, you're flunking right now. What are you going to do about it? And then how might I help you work on that plan? So I ask, what's your plan? How are we gonna try to get above water by the end of the semester so we can pass the class? He goes, actually, I don't really have a plan for improving anything because I'm going to transfer at the end of the semester. This was the first semester of the year and his first semester at college. He was a freshman. This is the fall. And I had also looked at his other grades, and I could tell, oh, he's flunking all his other classes too. So I was like, okay, well, why are you transferring? I'm trying to, try to help this kid however I can. Why are you doing that? He goes, well, I found out it's a little bit more expensive than I thought it was going to be. And I was like, okay, but I mean, you enrolled here. Didn't you look at the tuition, then the bill you were getting and how much it was going to cost? Like, I'm not sure why you're surprised now when you probably should have noticed that, well before ever coming here. So I don't understand. Why are you surprised, or why do you think now you can't afford it? And he goes, well, I had gotten a basketball scholarship, but now I'm seeing that there were actually other expenses involved that I wasn't aware of, and I just can't afford it. And so, I just don't think I'd be better off going back home. I was like, oh, well, where's home? He's from another state. So I was like, wait a second. I said, this is a kid who, again, is on like the 5th string JV basketball team. He was never going to play. All right. I had also, in the meantime, looked up his high school stats because it's very easy to find out what kids did in high school these days. And he had barely played. Okay, he wasn't like a superstar basketball player in high school. He wasn't even a starter. He was not a good high school player. And I was like, so you got a scholarship to play basketball here? He's like, yeah, but it only covered part of it. So that's that tuition discount. His high school grades were very average. He was like a 2.5 student or whatever. So like not horrible, but certainly not great. But clearly he had been told, hey, you can come to our school and be on the basketball team and we'll give you a scholarship. And so this kid believed it. And so he left his home state, came all the way to our state, and now realized, oh, I'm not cut out for the academics. Like he wasn't smart enough to be in college. So he's flunking all of his classes. He's not a good enough basketball player to be on the team. And the tuition remaining on his bill was still too high. So now, what's this kid going to do? He's going to go back to his state with no credits to transfer because he flunked all his classes. He never got any basketball experience because he wasn't good enough and didn't make the varsity team. And it was 10 grand or so in debt. Like we made that kid's life worse. Like when colleges or coaches or whoever is trying to pull these kids in and go, we're trying to give these kids a chance to make their lives better and give them a shot. Like Yeah, maybe you also might be lying to them and making their lives worse. Because what you should do instead, when you see a kid who might be interested in your school, you look at their stats and go, "Well, you averaged 2 points a game in high school. We're one of the best. We're a very good small college team. You're probably not going to make it here. You're probably not good enough to make our team. If you want to come here as a student, that's your choice. But you're going to have to pay your own way because that's what students have to do." And when you look at their grades and go, well, you were only a 2.5 student in high school, and this is college, it should be harder. So maybe what you should do is stay in your home state, go to a junior college for a couple of years, make sure you actually like college, get some credits under your belt, and then if you still like our school, like what we stand for, and we have a certain degree program you like or something like that, then great. But you should plan on just coming as a student. Or if you think you want to go play basketball, you can do that, but you're just not gonna be able to do that here. Okay. That's what a responsible school should say to a student who might be interested in your school. You need to look at them and go, let's be honest here. What would actually be best for your future is this path. You might think it's this path, but I'm here to tell you as an expert in in college sports and college academics, this path, at least at this school, isn't probably going to work for you. And if you want to try it and pay your own way, that's up to you. I can't stop you from doing that. But this other way would save you some money, would help you stay close to home so you could, again, save more money. Maybe you could live at home and just commute, and kind of get your feet wet with this college stuff and get on the right track. And then we'll see how you do. Like, that's what a school should do. Instead of reaching out to kids all over the country and saying, drive across the country and come to our state so you're paying out of state tuition to be on a basketball team that you're not actually on and to take classes that you're never going to pass. Oh, and we get to keep the money. Like, why are we doing that to students? So this is what happens. Now, that might be a one-off story, but again, I was at a school where I was like, well, I know your story, and our school is filled with kids just like you. So how many other kids are we doing this to? And when I started asking questions about that, like, people were not happy. So like, this is what they're trying to keep quiet. So this article is really important for starting to pull back the veil a little bit on what goes on regarding college sports and how many students get taken advantage of. They aren't told the whole story. They end up in big debt. They aren't ready for the academics. They just don't fit in with the intellectual environment. There's just a million problems that, again, those of us who have the background that I have, from the student, from the coach, from a professor standpoint, especially at small schools, where again, I've worked at schools where the administration above me had no background in any of that. They were all from giant universities, so they didn't know anything about how small colleges operate. And I'd be like, hey, I have experience with this. Let me give you a couple warnings before you go forward. And they're like, nope, we need money, so we're doing this. Okay, and then the school gets in trouble. So this is way more widespread than people think. This is just one school in Ohio. But with all the schools that are closing lately, you can be assured that many of them tried the let's grow with sports route, and it hasn't been going well. So if you're a parent out there, be aware that just because your kid gets an offer to be at a school, be very careful. I wouldn't want your kid having to come back home after one semester like my student did and go, yeah, that school told me I was going to play and I didn't. And I couldn't even, transfer my credits. And now my family's in debt. I don't want that to be your family. So we need to be, again, much more vigilant as parents on what exactly these schools are offering. When they say they're giving you a scholarship, you need to be very clear on what exactly that means and what the kid needs to do in order to keep that scholarship and all that stuff. Because I've witnessed it, that many schools are not being honest with those students and those families. And I'm trying to look out for you. So again, I'm not saying this is all schools. Some schools are growing and doing well. Some schools, sports was just the boost it needed to kind of get itself back on track academically. And now they're sort of focusing on that. That's, fine, whatever. But there's a lot of schools who have, again, the doubling down, and you think, oh, you're just digging yourself a deeper hole. And this is ruining your reputation as an institution. So, again, this is just one example, this Lourdes school, but just be aware there are lots of those out there. And, I want what's best for your student and his or her education most of all. And if sports is a part of that, great. Again, I was an athlete. I was a coach. I believe in sports. And I even believe in adding new sports if there's an interest in that. But like I said in a previous video, you have to look at the college environment from a bigger perspective, because if all you're focusing on is revenue or enrollment or this narrow metric, like, well, yeah, you can game that in a million different ways. That doesn't mean it's good for your university. And what you're not seeing is the 12 other consequences that are going to ruin the social, academic, spiritual, if it's a faith-based institution, whatever other components are part of your university, its relationship to the town you're in, whatever, geographic, all those things are going to be affected by what you're doing. And most administrators never think to that level. So I'm just trying to give you a little bit of insight as someone who's been a part of all of that before. So that's from the Chronicle of Higher Education. Thanks for listening. I know that was a bit of a long one, but very important topic, because sports are more popular than ever, in high schools and at colleges. And so we need to really understand what's going on, though, at the university level with how these things are funded. So that's that. Thanks again for watching. See you next time.